Natalie. Today we're going to be making a mini bunting. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing you're going to need is to gather some fabrics together for your project. I've just chosen a selection of pretties in small prints and one sort of slightly larger that I can use as a feature fabric. You're also going to need some plain. If you want to incorporate the little stitcheries that I'm putting into my little bunting, I've just chosen a really pretty little tone on tone with a pale sort of pinky print on it that you can barely see. It'd be good for stitcheries. Okay, the next thing that you need is some thin cardboard. So we need to make some circle templates. 3" is the size of the circle, so you can use a compass if you want to. Or I'm also going to put the circles on the website so you can just download them and print them out onto a bit of thin cardboard if you're a bit computer savvy. And then we're just going to cut those out with some paper scissors. The other thing you'll need is some parlan. This is just to give a bit of body to the little bunting shapes, help them hold their shape. It's still quite thin, so you could also use like some iron-on pellin. This is just a really nice soft product called parlan that I like to use. So a few different pens and things that might be useful for the project. So I use a tan fine point pen to trace off the stitcheries, and then I've also got a blue water erasable marker for tracing off our circle template, and I also have one of these fantastic little water paintbrush things to remove the marker as well. And then for the hexagons, you'll probably want to use a glue stick because these are really small. They're 3/8 of an inch hexagons, so it's a little more difficult to base them with thread, so I would suggest you'd want to use the glue stick pen. And also you might want to utilize a bit of the basting glue. And I also found one of these little quilting clips is really useful. I'll show you what we're going to do with that later on as well. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so to start with, I'm just going to cut out the circles, or at least one circle to start with. You want to be a little bit careful and make sure that you get the shape correct, because it'll just make it neater when you come to doing the project. So remembering this is a 3" circle. Now these can be reused. You don't need as many circles as each piece we're going to make, but you can reuse them. They're going to get ironed, so after a while they do get a little bit messy. So I've put 4 on the template there so that you can have a few of them anyway. Okay, so then we've got our circle. If you're doing the stitcheries, we've got the little stitchery designs here that we're going to trace onto the fabric on our light print. But I do want to make sure that they're going to be in the correct position on the fabric. So I'm just going to lightly trace the circle onto the background with the water erasable marker. So to trace it on, I'm going to just place this over the top of the design. Turn it on, there we go. And I can line that up. I've left some lines on the actual artwork so that you can help line up your little circle there. So make sure you don't trace those parts. And we're going to use the fine point marker pen. This is a permanent marker, but it's got a very fine point, so your stitching is going to cover it over. So when you've finished tracing your stitcheries onto your fabric, then you'd want to put your backing on the back of the stitchery designs before you start stitching. So that's your wistful weft or any other backing product that you want to use. And you can see on my little one there on the back of it, I've got some backing on there, and then I've got the colours and stitches used to do the four little designs in the pattern as well, if you want to take advantage of that. Okay, on to the next bit. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the little flags for the bunting. So these little bits here that make up the bunting, and I've just chosen out a couple of the larger feature prints that we're going to use, and I'm going to slightly fussy cut them a little bit so that we can see some of the pretty part of the design. So these templates are the actual finished size of your product, so you've got to remember to add a bit of extra there for your cutting line. So I'm actually going to cut about 1/2 inch larger all the way around. Okay. Now I've already traced quite a few of the little circle template onto my parlan, so I'm ready to cut out one of these. Okay, so just place this centered inside your fabric on the back of it, and make sure that you've got the rough side down, so that's the glued side. You want that against the fabric, and then flip it over, iron from the front. You don't want to iron directly onto the parlan because it will melt. Okay, so just give it a little press like that so it's stuck, and then we're going to grab our thread and a needle, and we're going to just sew a gathering stitch around the outside edge. So I just sort of eyeball it, make sure it's going to be long enough and with a bit of left over on the ends, and then cut that off. You don't need a knot in the end of the thread on this occasion. And then we're just from the front going to sew a running stitch around the edge, just like that. Leave a bit of thread hanging out the end so that you can tie with it at the end. If it starts to coil back on itself, you want to stop every now and then, just let the needle unwind. Okay, when we get back to the end, back to the start, I should say. Okay, we want to pop the cardboard inside there and just line it up with the parlan circle, and just give a little tug on the ends of your thread there to gather it around the cardboard template. And then we're going to tie that a little bit taut. It's always handy if you have someone to help at this stage, put their finger on the knot, but we can do it ourselves. Okay, so I want to give that a little press and I find the tip of the iron is really useful to just sort of like push in from the outer edge all the way around the circle. Try and keep that edge nice and neat. Okay, and then give it a bit of a press on the front. Then turn it over and just gently ease out the cardboard template. And then give it another press. There we go, ready to stitch together. Okay, so we're ready to sew this together. So we're just going to fold it in half, and because we've done a feature print on this one, make sure you fold it so that it's nicely centered in the flag. And we just want to give that a press on the iron to help hold the shape, and then just pop your little quilting clip on there, or a pin will do, just to hold it while you stitch it. Okay, so either a matching coloured thread or a neutral coloured thread, and then just put a knot in the end. And we want to hide the end of the thread inside the flag. Come out in the corner there where you're going to start stitching, and then you just want to catch the very edge of that and start sewing it all the way around the edge. Okay, so now we're going to work on the hexagons. We're going to do a couple of the little bunting flags with hexagons. Here's one I've done earlier, so that's what we're going to make now. Okay, so you can see these hexagon papers, I'm reusing them. They look a bit rough around the edges, but they're still fine to use, so you can use them 2 or 3 times at least. So what I'm going to do is just find a straight edge. I'm just going to hold it there and cut it out to shape, just to show you how much to leave around the outside. It's probably about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more. Okay, now with your glue pen, just want to run a little bit, be careful not to use too much. Press it down on one edge, come to the opposite edge, press that down. Then you can work around the sides. Always go opposite edge to opposite edge. Don't worry too much about if they start lifting off a little bit, that doesn't really matter too much. And then you're going to finish with the 2 final sides. Okay, so that's how you baste the fabric onto there. So I'm just going to continue. I've got enough here to do one of the little flags, so I'll just continue so you can see how many we're going to need and how to put them together. You're going to need 12 covered hexagons for this, and you want to arrange them into 3 rows. Just to be visually pleasing. Okay, when you're happy with that, you can start to sew them together in rows. So I'm going to put these right sides together. I've got a knot in the end of my thread, And I'm going to hold these so that I can just rest the needle on the top of my finger, and I'm just going to catch the fabric just on top of the cardboard. You don't actually want to go through the cardboard. And then I've got my little thimblette here to help push the needle through. And you're just going to catch those couple of threads all the way along the top here. And then you just do a knot at the end of that edge, cut it off and open it out. Okay, and we need another knot in the end of the thread. And then repeat with this edge. Okay, there we've got one row, and we're going to start on the next row. So once we've sewn together the short edges, then we're going to stitch along this zigzag edge to sew the rows together. So the first edge you're going to sew is this one here. So make sure you put those right sides together on that edge that we want to join. When you get into that corner, just open it back out, and then you want to match up these two edges here. So this one you can fold so that you can get those two edges together. Just check they line up nicely, and then you continue along this edge. Okay, and then we're going to do the same to join this piece on. Okay, so now we've got our hexagons sewn together. The next thing to do is take out all the papers. So you just want to gently prise the fabric off at the back of the hexagons and just pop them out. So this is why you don't want to put too much glue on when you're gluing the fabric onto the hexagons, so that they come out reasonably easily. Okay, so now with the iron, this top edge here, we want to keep the shape of the hexagons. That edge is going to be appliqued onto another piece of fabric. These bottom edges, we actually just want to leave them out. Okay, so just put it on your ironing board and just refold any of the edges that you need to, and just give them a little press back into that hexagon shape. Okay, so you'll see we've kept this zigzag shape at the top and all the other edges are splayed out. So the next thing we want to do is grab our cardboard template, and on the right side of our background fabric, just mark the outline. Okay, then what we want to do is cut this about 1/2 inch outside the circle. Okay, now fold this in half, just to give you a halfway mark there for the crease. Okay, and then we want to just line that up. And just check that this is going to cover that line around there, which it does there. Okay. Now with your basting glue, just a few little dabs under the edge. And just hold that for a few seconds. Okay, now we're going to just applique this top edge here to the background fabric. Okay, so next thing to do, we're going to add the bit of parlan behind it. And again, just make sure you iron from the front. And then in the same way that we did the other ones, you're just going to sew a gathering stitch around the outside edge and then pull it in around the cardboard, tie it off, and then turn it over and stitch the edge. So now that I've got all these shapes made, I just want to take off the water erasable marker that you can still see on some of them. So just a bit of water on a paintbrush will do, or if you've got one of these handy little contraptions, you just fill them up with water and it's got a paintbrush on the end, so it's a great way of taking off the blue marker. And as you can see, that just comes right off. There we go. So I've got all my pieces now, all the different options. We've got some stitchery, the little hexagons, and some plain pieces. So now the fun part is putting them all together. Okay, so I found this gorgeous pink rickrack and I thought this would be lovely for attaching my little flags for the bunting. So I'm going to use the quilting clips just to hold them in position. That way I can easily move them around and get them in the right position that I'm going to be happy with. I'm going to place them about 1/2 inch apart. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to stitch these onto the rickrack and then we'll hang it up. So when you're happy with the position of all of your flags, flip it over and we'll stitch them on at the back. So I've just got a knot in the thread there, and then I'm just going to do a large running stitch, I think, just to attach it. Okay, so I've finished stitching these on and I've just tied a little loop and bow in the end of the rickrack and it's ready to hang, and I've got just the spot. There we go. What do you think? Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy making one yourself.